All things new, the blame game. This is for my fellow Catholics in the Archdiocese of St. Louis. I recently attended a parish listening session. I was instructed as follows. 1. Be quiet and listen. 2. Choose your preferred way to close 60% of parishes in your area. And 3. Do not play the blame game. As instructed, I spent most of my time listening quietly. I heard that Gen X people are about twice as likely to reject God or the church entirely, or to participate very little, or to provide little financial support for the church in comparison to the older baby boomers. I heard that we would therefore have to drastically downsize the number of parishes in order to provide appropriately for the fewer, less active, and less generous Catholics of the future. I heard nothing about the reasons for these generational changes, nor about any efforts to reverse the trend. I recalled that our Archbishop has repeatedly estimated that the downsizing will allow for a vibrant diocese for the next 25 years or so. I guess that means that he expects another downsizing in or about the year 2050, long after his retirement. Next, as instructed, I tried to choose a favorite 60% closure model, but I had trouble focusing on the maps. I was bored by the geography because what I wanted to understand was the impact of the changes on people, and particularly on their eternal salvation. So I started doing some very rough math. I knew that, based on their experience with other downsizings, the consultants expect that more than 20% of parishioners from closed parishes will fail to join a new or consolidated parish. If we close 60%, or about 102 parishes, and the average small parish has 1,000 members, that's 102,000 parishioners affected in total. 20% of that is 20,400, a very conservative estimate of the number of people who will be adrift without a parish. I'm going to call them drifters. I wondered, how are these drifters likely to differ from those who do successfully join a new parish? Well, I expect that the drifters will include few, if any, people in excellent physical, mental, and financial health who are also active in their current parish and extremely firm in their faith. Instead, the group will include people for whom changing parishes is most difficult, and people whose motivation for practicing their faith is weakest. They will also include people with a combination of moderate obstacles and somewhat weak faith who will decide not to make the effort. In short, the drifters will be among the most spiritually vulnerable, and therefore most in need of preaching, teaching, the sacraments, and the support of the local faith community. And I don't see how that's going to change based on which model we choose or how we redraw the map. If we close parishes to achieve the numbers the Archbishop wants, we will end up with at least 20,000 drifters whose eternal souls will be in serious jeopardy. In good conscience, I can't endorse any model that produces that result. So I did not choose a model. I also did not play the blame game. The blame game is finger pointing instead of problem solving. It's a zero-sum debate. Each team argues that all or most of the blame belongs with the other team. Each team says the other team should solve the problem because it's the other team's fault. Each team accepts as little responsibility as possible. I've played the blame game many times in the past. It's divisive and wasteful, it exaggerates our differences, and it impedes cooperation. It's also pointless, like tic-tac-toe. There are no winners, there are no losers, there's only endless stalemate. I've been taught and eventually learned to play the responsibility game instead. The first move in this game is to try to understand the problem and identify all the ways in which I bear responsibility for it. I ask how I could have done better and how I can change to make it less likely for this kind of problem to appear in the future. Next, I share my findings with the others involved. I apologize. I publicly resolve to do better. And in order to make up for my honest mistakes or my selfish sins, I try to do more than anyone else to clean up the mess. After I've removed the plank from my own eye, I may ask others to accept more responsibility. Sometimes that's a bad idea. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary. In this case, I have privately spent many hours identifying my part in diminishing the number of Catholics and lukewarming the faith of those remaining. I know that I have sinned privately and publicly, exposed the weakness of my own faith, been silent when I should have spoken up, and spoken when I should have remained silent. By these actions, I have encouraged people of my generation and of younger generations to sin, to condone sin, to reject church teaching, and to compromise with all kinds of modernism. I am as responsible as anyone for the archdiocesan retreat and the enormous loss of souls that we've seen and that we can expect in the future. I also have some serious concerns about the Chancery and the entire downsizing team. Don't our church leaders bear some responsibility for this disaster? Isn't it their job to develop a theory about the cause of the problem, to take responsibility for their part in it, and to develop a remedy? If they have no theory, if they have no plan, shouldn't we object? Shouldn't we insist upon leadership from our leaders? I think so. All things new is not the answer. It's just a retreat designed to make it easier for Catholics to ignore the problem for another 20-25 years. The consultants' next generation parishes are not the answer. Wherever and whenever they've been tried, they've never managed to preserve the number and the devotion of the faithful. They are a very expensive dead end. Similarly, the consultants' evangelization plans are nothing but a distraction. The church is not falling apart due to a lack of evangelization. There was never a time and never a place where the descendants of Catholics were leaving the church in droves and being replaced by a greater number of converts. I'm waiting for clerical leadership. In the meantime, I encourage as many Catholics as possible to join with the lay folks at stlcatholics.org, at sostlp.org, and at saveromeofthewest.com, who are trying desperately to fill the leadership vacuum. Thank you for your kind attention.